Okay, so for number one, this is exercise one, we're going to be hooking up one outlet. So what we're going to need is our conduit, a Phillips screwdriver, a flat screwdriver, some lineman pliers, which are these in blue, our cutters, our measuring tape for measuring length of wire, one outlet, and then these wires for our kit here. So for this setup, you're going to be hooking up to power here and using box number one here. So they're all labeled 1, 2, and 3, but we will all be using just box 1 for exercise number 1. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to rough measure out how much we need here, and we need about this much, about 3 to 4 inches for our breakout box. And we're going to go through this hole here and then down into this box. So just to get a rough measurement, I went from the back of the box out to here. I want about 6 inches of wire. And if you need to use a measuring tape to take a look at that, go ahead and get your measuring tape out. And so I want to be right about there. Double check. And we will go ahead and cut our wire. So we're going to feed it through this hole, and we'll start at the breakout box first. We can use our strippers. We are using 14 instead of 12. We're going to be using 14 here to strip our wire. So we're going to put that in there. And again, we only need about 4 inches. So I'm going to go back and forth, wiggle that a little bit, pull that off, move our paper. And then we have our setup here. This is hot, that's neutral, and that's ground. So again, black is hot, white is going to go to neutral, and our copper bare wire is going to go to ground. So we'll strip that off with our 14. You need about 1/2 inch. Again, you want to twist and then pull, twist, and then pull, and you want to back these screws out just enough to get enough room to slide that wire in. And then we will hook up our hot here. Our neutral here. And our ground here. You might have to stretch this a little bit. You should be good. So now we're going to take the other end and we're going to feed it through the top of the box, through the back. If it's not punched out, you can take the tip of your cutters or the tip of a flat blade screwdriver, and you just want to knock out a little piece of plastic that's in the back there if it has not been knocked out already. And then go ahead and pull that out. We're going to feed this through, and we want, again, about 6 inches sticking out from the front of the box to the end of our wire, okay? So I need a little bit more than that, because where I strip this off, I only want about 1 inch between the sheathing here on the Romex to the back of the box. Everything else needs to be stripped away. So again, we're going to pick our 14. We're using 14 here. And go right about there. Get rid of our paper. And now we'll go ahead and strip this off. We want to take off about 1/2 inch. If you need to take off more, you can always take off more. And if you cut off too much, you can always trim some off. So don't be too worried about it, but we want about that much of the insulation removed from the wire. Okay, so we're going to do that on the neutral. We're also going to do that on the ground, 14. And now we're ready to hook up our receptacle. So we've got a receptacle. One way to know which side is hot and which side is neutral is the blade. The small blade is always going to be the hot side, and the large blade is always going to be the neutral side. So that's how you can know. Another way, sometimes this will be like a brass or a gold color, and the other side will be a chrome color. So again, the brass is typically always hot, and then the chrome side is always a neutral side. And then the green, that's going to be to our bare wire, that's going to be our ground wire here. Okay? So we're going to take our tool, we're going to use this hole right here for our solid to make that bend. So what I like to do is I just push this through and touch it right there with my finger. Actually, I'll do it with my thumb, it's a little bit easier. And then I'm going to bend this over on itself, maybe. And then make that curl. If it's a little bit too far forward, you can always use your pliers, kind of back it up a little bit. If it's a little bit too big, you can use your pliers to make it a little bit smaller. So use your pliers to manipulate this if you need to, but I want this end of the copper to stop right where the insulation was cut off. That's what I'm looking for on both the neutral and the hot. Here, so let's do this one. Go. It's a little too far forward, so I'll just bend this back just a little bit. Now we're lined up, and now we're ready to attach this to here. But what I want to do first is I want to kind of pre-bend my wires a little bit, so when I go to put this in the box, I don't have to mess with it later. But again, I only want about this much of the Romex actually in the box. I want everything else needs to be outside here. And this usually gets stapled here, but we're not going to staple anything for right now. So I'm going to push that in, just do a little pre-bend here, this side, pre-bend here. And we can do this one too, just to kind of get in place. And we'll bend that one in a minute. But again, this side, now sometimes these come with the screws out on both sides. The ones I'm not using, I want to screw those in first so they're not sticking out. And that way I don't have to worry about them touching something that they shouldn't be touching. So I'm just going to tighten that up. Same thing on the neutral side. And it doesn't matter what side you start with. So let's just start with the neutral side. I want this hook here, though, to be going in the same direction as the way I'm screwing the screw. So right now, if I put this on here, it will fit. But the screw is going, as I tighten this will turn this the wrong way. So what I want to do is actually flip this around. You can do it by hand, or you can use the pliers, but we'll just turn this way and hook that into place. And what I'm looking for when I do this, and I'm probably gonna have to pull this back a little bit, I don't want my screw pinching the insulation. I want a little bit of wire there. Otherwise, if it pinches the insulation, I don't have good contact with the copper. So I'm gonna back this up just a little bit. So now we can hook this on, and you can see now that my screw is not going to make contact with my insulation, but at the same time, I want to make sure my insulation is not beyond the plastic here, because that will help insulate the wire and make sure it also doesn't touch anything else. I want my insulation right between the screw and the back of the receptacle. Okay, so now we can go ahead and tighten this down, make sure it's nice and tight. Just give it a tug, make sure it's secure. And since we're here, we'll go ahead and put our ground on as well. So I'm going to put my bend on this. Roll that around, pinch it down a little bit. And sometimes this may be screwed down, sometimes it may be open, but let's open this up. Put that in place. Tighten that down. But if I'm not careful, it wants to do that. So make sure you're holding this as you're tightening it, or it may want to try and walk out. So put a little tension on it with one hand while you're tightening with the other hand, and that should prevent that trying to get away from the screw there. So make sure it's nice and tight. Just double check it, make sure it's not going to move. So now we're done with the neutral side, we're done with our ground side, now we'll go to the hot side. Now again, our screw is going to turn clockwise this way, and we're pointing the wrong direction this way. So I'm going to just It's a little hard to twist, so I'm just going to grab my pliers, not the cutter part, but just the tip. I'll just rotate that around like that. That way it's going the right way for us. Hook that in. Again, I want to check, and I'm close. I'm gonna just take off a little bit of that. So hook that in. Again, check it. It looks pretty good. You can see I'm not going to touch the insulation with the screw, but at the same time, the insulation is in front of the back of my receptacle, so now I can tighten that down. But again, neatness counts on this project. It needs to look right. It needs to be set up right. This is sticking out too far, or the end is sticking out too far. That will count for your grade. So make sure that you have it nice and neat. So now this is all together. Just kind of pre-bend it, and this is going to go in the box. And we don't need to screw these in all the way, but let's at least get them started, so that way it's easier to check it with our electrical box. And you can use a flathead here, or you can use a Phillips. It doesn't matter which one you would like to use. And now we're ready to test. So here's our electrical breakout box. Here we're going to check our circuits. This just runs off of 3 1.5 volt batteries, so a total of 6 volts. It's not 120 volts in a wall, so there's nothing that can hurt you here as far as checking this. This is for other stuff we're going to be doing later. Don't touch it. This is for another project. Don't touch it. This cord right here, this is our breakout box power connector. It's going to provide our power from the batteries through this wire to our breakout box here to get our power here. To test the outlet, we have this and this cord here. So we're going to go ahead and plug this in and turn it on. And what we should have are 3 green lights. Here's our little key right here. Depending on how we set this up, if we did it properly, we'll have these 3 lights that are turned green right here. If there's something wrong, you'll have something else as far as the pattern here, and you'll look at that pattern to tell you what it is that could be going wrong, and then we can diagnose it from there.